The reality is in public health, we use harm reduction on everything. I mean, it's just one of the things we take into account. We've done phenomenal work in dealing with HIV/AIDS. We've done phenomenal work on automobile accidents, industrial equipment, food processing. I mean, just a whole range of things. Children's sleepwear. We can go on and on about any product that's on the market. We try to reduce the risk as much as we can for the people who are still going to use that product or engage in that activity. When we look at cigarettes, we have such huge potential because we know not just that cigarettes kill people in extraordinary numbers, but we know why. And it's happening because they're sucking smoke into their lungs. The nicotine that they need, which is the primary reason people smoke, is not particularly hazardous. It just would not be a huge cause of death if people were getting their nicotine without sucking the smoke into their lungs. You deal with, a few residual things like preventing formation of nitrosamines, heavy metals, et cetera, but things are fairly easily dealt with. You get rid of the combustion, you get rid of the problem.
Okay, this is where I want to bring in Bill. Do you agree with that? Or do you think it would be better to get people off nicotine entirely?
I think that David might disagree. I think he would agree that it would be great to get people off nicotine entirely. So there's sort of that agreement, and it's more the question of the strategy. It seems to me what David's talked about, what Canada did, and what other countries have done to reduce the tobacco epidemic. If you look at Canada, US, France, you see this huge increase in smoking, and then 20 years later, huge increases in lung cancer rates, along with other kinds of cancers and cardiovascular diseases. And then once countries started doing the labels, restricting access, smoke-free public places, helping people quit, and raising taxes, you see the consumption decline, and subsequently the lung cancer rates coming down. So the sense is like it would be great to get people off nicotine because then they wouldn't be smoking. And my focus has been more on what really got that sort of turned the curve on the epidemic. And a large part of that, from what I've seen or what I think, is that it was a matter of cigarettes becoming very cool, or governments actually promoting it, like handing out cigarettes to GIs during World War II was a big thing in the U.S. And so the question in my mind is, if you make space for people to have alternative nicotine delivery things, whether it's chewing tobacco is also harmful, but there are other kinds of chewing tobaccos or other things that aren't like necessarily like patches that need prescriptions or something like that. There are other substances, ways of getting nicotine that aren't as harmful as smoking. And the concern I have is if you open up the space for that, aren't you kind of like saying, it's kind of like the gateway drug argument, which I don't really buy when it comes to, this is why I'm kind of uncomfortable making this point, but it's this idea that if people start on e-cigarettes, then you start seeing people puffing in public, and does that start making the idea of puffing a cigarette even in private more attractive? So to me, the critical thing sort of, and David and I have had these arguments, is like, we have almost 1 billion people in the world smoking right now. I would like to get them to quit, but I'm really concerned about the 3 million a year or so who are starting up each year. And so I'm kind of concerned, what happens to these alternatives, these harm reduction strategies, if you're getting people off one kind of nicotine onto another? What happens to that initial group that's starting up? That's where I'm most concerned.